ang 93.5 Marion FM. Nagsibya sa kusog nga 200 watts o babati sa kalungsuran sa habagatang kasadpan nga bahin sa probinsya sa Leyte. Ang Marion FM nanukad sa ground floor sa Sabino Montera Building sa Dan Army Villaflores, sakop sa barangay Western Poblasyon sa lungsod sa Hilongos. Ang sibianan nga 93.5 Marion FM nahimugso sa bugtong tuyo ug tumong nga ikasabwag ngadto sa mga lungsuranon ang kasaligan nga mga impormasyon, kaugmaran ug kalambuan dinhi sa lungsod sa Hilongos ug sa kasilinganan niini nga mga lungsod. Mabati sa 93.5 sa dial sa inyong mga radyo sa FM band. Soaring higher in the airwaves. 93.5 Marion FM, now signing on.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Pioneer Information Hub in town, 93.5 Marion FM. Soaring high in delivering your daily dose of information, music, and entertainment. This is 93.5 Marion FM. Soaring higher into the airwaves. Broadcasting from the heart of your awesome and amazing town of Hilongos, soaring higher, 93.5 Marian FM. Broadcasting live from the heart of Hilongos, this is 93.5 Marian FM.
Ako si Annabelle. As kayo ako cholesterol level nasa 200 plus. Akong gisulayan inom og DTX 500. Halos tanan ako silingan ga DTX 500. Nag-inom ko 3 capsules a day. Sa usa ka bulan pagpa-check up na ako, nag 100 na lang.
DTX 500. Mapali sa mga butika. DTX
Ako
500.
si Makoy taga San Carlos ga yelo ako lawas tungod sa problema na ko sa akong atay. Kalungog na ako sa radyo ang DTX 500. Ako dayon gubanatan og inom tuwa sa buntag, tuwa sa gabi. 2 weeks pa lang may alibyo na. Pag 1 month ka pila ayo na ako.
DTX 500. Mapali sa mga butika.
SAI Summer Season Sale. Free installation with no hidden charges. Mabilisan sale para sa parating na summer. This Smart Queen High Efficiency Model FTKC is an inverter type air conditioner with Eco Plus mode, an energy saving mode that will automatically adjust set temperature to an eco-friendly level while fulfilling basic cooling comfort needs. Say goodbye to sweaty nights and hello to sweet dreams with our energy efficient aircon. You can contact us at 0916-858-6228. SAI Air Conditioning and Ventilation Services.
This is the Pioneer Information Hub in town, 93.5 Marian FM. Soaring high in delivering your daily dose of information, music, and entertainment. This is 93.5 Marian FM. Soaring higher into the airwaves. Broadcasting from the heart of your awesome and amazing town of Hilongos, soaring higher, 93.5 Marian FM. Broadcasting live from the heart of Hilongos, this is 93.5 Marian FM.
DTX 500.
Ako sa Jubilee, sobra kataas akong blood sugar. 300 kapin, gitistingan ako og inom GTX 500, duha ka capsule sa isa ka adlaw. Sunod sa isa ka bulan, normal na jud akong blood sugar, 70 na lang.
DTX 500. Mapali sa mga butika. DTX 500 Health Alert with Dr. Ramil Uy. DTX 500.
Ako sa Jubilee, sobra kataas akong blood sugar. 300 kapin, gitistingan ako og inom GTX 500, duha ka capsule sa isa ka adlaw. Sunod sa isa ka bulan, normal na jud akong blood sugar, 95 na lang.
DTX 500. Mapali sa mga butika.
Welcome sa atong tulumanon. Hatod sab kami kaninyo sa mga nagkalinlain nga mga herbal tips, health tips og health information. Og syempre, mutudlo sabi kaninyo sa mga pagkaon nga kinahanglan kaunon, mga pagkaon nga kinahanglan likayan kay kami nituo sa gingon ni Dr. Sin. If you eat wrongly, no doctor can cure. But if you eat rightly, you don't need a doctor. Sir GP?
DTX 500 very important. Mo ning gibalik-balik kaninyo. Importante siya sa pagkontrol sang oxidative stress. Oxidative stress mo nagakos sa inyong cancer, mga tumor, mga bukol-bukol, pagtiguang sa imong mga organs. Once gatiguang ang organs dok, gapigaw ang yang mahina ang yang nga performance, yang functions. Imagine magtiguang imuhang pancreas unsa na lang. Wala
Correct.
kay insulin, wala kay glucagon.
Oy, nakainom na ba ka sa imong MyTC? Kinahanglanon yun na ninyo. Buntag udto hapon para proteksyon sa balatian. Proteksyon nga dili ka magka-problema, mag-weak ang imong nga immune system.
Ato ang dishisgutan kining allergy. Ang allergy pait kay ni kay bisag paborito mong pagkaon magka-allergy man ka.
Naibis pa ni allergy. Antihistamine.
Antihistamine. Di man na sayon kaayo nga inig allergy nimo antihistamine ka lang antihistamine.
Maanad ang imong
Maanad na
lawas.
ka, ma-accustom na ka. Usang pinaka-common nga allergy, Doc, is allergic rhinitis.
Correct.
Sa imong ilong. no?
Stuffy nose, gadagan ang ilong, or runny nose.
Runny nose. Oho.
Gadagan ang ilong.
Mga di ka makaginawa kaayo.
Permikaga ang sanat.
Hatching.
Hatching.
So kini siya mga
Pinot. Sa mo pinot.
pinot. Simpleng alikabok, simpleng abog, simpleng
Even mites.
kining mga usok ka sigarilyo. Asok ka sigarilyo, mga asok na dauban sa inyong mga silingan. Ana, kining allergy god mo ni defense system sa atong lawas. Unta kini siya og dili ni siya ni bugo, ato ang immune system. Kini siya tadok mo design ni siya nga arong pagka-develop mo mag allergy makaingon ka imong lawas nga oy stop na kay dili siya makaayop kanimo. Apan dok og ang allergy musugod na nga kining pagkaon nga healthy man unta nga makamaayo man sa imo nya mo ni imong allergyhan isa nakapadimaan nga naa kay problema sa imong immune system. That's why we recommend kining Mighty C.
Mighty C o DTX 500.
to correct your allergies.
Correct. To correct sa pagkabugo sa ilang immune system. Kaya kung bright na imong immune system, sa mingon na imong immune system, ayaw ko ilara. Abog ka lang. Molds ka lang. Mites ka lang. Ayaw ko ilara buhok ka lang, di ba?
So ana
Kung bright
kung bright
imong sundalos lawas, imong immune system. Immune system, sundalos lawas pareho ra na.
So
kung bright, di gyud na mailad. Nya kinsa may ganahan ta mo kaon og mites, mo kaon og molds. So importante dere ang strong nga immune system. Ayaw permintihan nga magsila kag inom anang mga antihistamine, decongestant, mga steroid inhalers. Kinahanglan i-correct nimo ang hinungdan sa imong allergy. Walay lain nga hinungdan, weak ang imong immune system. Bugo ang imong sundalos lawas. So kinahanglan pabrayta, kinahanglan pahimsuga gamit ang DTX 500 ug ang Mighty C.
DTX 500.
Ako sa Jubilee, sobra kataas akong blood sugar. 300 kapin, gitistingan ako og inom GTX 500, duha ka kapsul sa isa ka adlaw. Sunod sa isa ka bulan, normal na jud akong blood sugar, 70 na lang.
DTX 500. Mabali sa mga butika. DTX 500. Health Alert. Question of the hour.
Unsay angay buhaton ka nang gitungha sa binulan nga regla kuya?
Wala ang sasa?
Wala gitungha diya.
Amenorrhea, absence of menstruation. O basig mabdos ka.
Ana.
Pero kabalo ka Sir GP, that's hormonal imbalance. Kung amenorrhea na siya, try niyo mag-inom og DTX 500 o kining Mighty C. Mabalik nag-normal.
Limpyo nga tay, mag DTX 500 kanunay. DTX 500 Health Alert. DTX 500.
Ako sa Jubilee, sobra kataas akong blood sugar. 300 kapin, gitistingan ako og inom GTX 500, duha ka kapsul sa isa ka adlaw. Sunod sa isa ka bulan, normal na jud akong blood sugar, 95 na lang.
DTX 500. Mabali sa mga butika. DTX 500 Health Alert.
Kinasab si Dr. Ramil Oy magaingon ang Dios magapanalangin ka natong tanan, mag-aayos dag nga sakit ninyo og balatian.
DTX 500 Health Alert with Dr. Ramil Uy sa healthy nga kasing-kasing. DTX 500 ang moamping. DTX 500 Health Alert with Dr. Ramil Uy. DTX 500.
Si Mario, na ako'y diabetes, 250 akong sugar. Tumar ko DTX 500, kaya ang akong gangas, kayo yung BP na ayos sa DTX 500. Doha kapsul, buntag ko sa gabi. After 3 weeks lang, 100 na ako sugar. Aktibo dyan kayo yung DTX 500.
DTX 500. Mabali sa mga butika. DTX 500.
Ako si Annabel. As kayo ako cholesterol level nasa 200 plus. Akong gisulayan inom og DTX 500. Halos tanan ako silingan ga DTX 500. Nag-inom ko 3 capsules a day. Sa usa ka bulan pagpa-check up nako nag 100 na lang.
DTX 500. Mabali sa mga butika.
This is the Information Hub, soaring higher in the airwaves. This is 93.5 Marian FM. Pioneering in information distribution in town, soaring higher into the airwaves. 93.5 Marian FM.
Hilongos Aggregates. Magtukod ka magbay, tamakanan ba yung yuta kay na lupa? Ay nagabala ka parts? Kunta ka dayon ang Hilongos Aggregates. Pasta sila nga mutomod sa inyong mga panahanglanon sa construction. Ano na sila wash sand, screen sand, 3-4, 3-8, G1, ready mix, boulders, ug uban pa. Hilongos Aggregates. Makontak sila sa numero nga 0915-5952-608 o di ba kaha sa 0949-5722-708. Hilongos Aggregates sa panginahanglanon sa construction. Ang Hilongos Aggregates aduna sab sila'y ready mix concrete. Hilongos Aggregates.
Gabon Herbal Capsule. Inom o Gabon Herbal Capsule. Duha ka capsule kada adlaw 30 minutes before kamukaon. Atong paminahon ang naayo human miinom sa Gabon Herbal Capsule.
Ako si Rodora, taga Poblasyon Buog, usa ka angkan. Kabuhiunan kayo kong dako. Hinsulay ko og inom sa Gabon Capsule o gisabayan na ko Gabon Coffee Mix. Akong naobserbahan na wala naman ko kabuhia. Bisan akong bana nga modalikat sad og inom, nawala ang hubag sa iyang kumagko sa tiil tungod sa arthritis. Sa maotong ga-maintain na jud ko sa Gabon Coffee Mix o Gabon Capsule.
Ang Gabon Herbal Capsule o Gabon Herbal Oil o Gabon Coffee Mix inyong mapalit sa tanang parmasi, Visayas ug Mindanao. Ang original nga Gabon Herbal Oil, butilya ang isudlan.
Kung gusto ka na mutiam-tiam sa lamian nga pan din sa lungsod sa Hilongos, ayaw na paglangay bay. Bisitahan na yon ang Lulalos Bake Shop. Abli kada adlaw, gikan sa alas 5 sa sayong buntag, hangtod na sa alas 7:30 ang takna sa gabi. Tilawi ang timplada sa pan nga dili lang lami, kundi presko pa yun. Lulalos Bake Shop. Ginamit ang mga dekalidad o gilado nga mga sangkap sa pagluto sa pan. Mao nga ang ilang pan siguradong lamian. Bisitahan na yon ang Lulalos Bake Shop sa kalye Santa Barbara sa lungsod sa Hilongos. Kay basig mahutdan ka. Mahimo silang makontak silang Facebook page nga Lulalos Bake Shop. Lulalos Bake Shop, absolutely delicious.
DTX 500.
Ako sa Jubilee, sobra kataas akong blood sugar. 300 ka pin, gitistingan ako og inom GTX 500, duha ka kapsul sa isa ka adlaw. Sunod sa isa ka bulan, normal na jud akong blood sugar. 25 na lang.
DTX 500. Mabali sa mga butika. DTX
Ako
500.
si Makoy taga San Carlos, ga yelo akong lawas tungod sa problema na ko sa akong atay. Kalungog na ako sa radyo, ang DTX 500. Ako dayon gubanatan og inom tuwa sa buntag, tuwa sa gabi. 2 weeks pa lang, may alibyo na. Hard 1 month ka pa, naayo na ako.
DTX 500. Mabali sa mga butika.
Hillary Department Store, abunda sa bisan unsa nga mga matang sa panginahanglanon sa panimay, lapad nga kapilian sa grocery, di kalidad nga mga appliances, mga sinina ni kuya og ni baby na asab, ug uban pang mga gikinhanglan sa panimay, sa eskwela, sa trabaho ug sa inyong pagpagwapa o pagpagwapo. Ang Hillary Department Store nagtanyag sab sa wholesale o retail nga presyo alang sa ilang mga produkto. Alang sa inyong mga pangutana o mga pakisusi, kunta ka lamang palihog ang Hillary Department Store. Pinagay sa cellphone number nga 0917-157-4032 o sa landline number nga 567-8015. Muatiman sa inyong mga panginahanglanon ang mga buutan ug maabi-abihon nila nga mga staff. Busa, unsa pa imong gipaabot? Adto na ta sa Hillary Department Store nga anaa nahimutang sa CV Alcuino Street, sakop sa Barangay Sentral sa lungsod sa Hilongos. Hillary Department Store. SAI Summer Season Sale. Free installation with no hidden charges. Mabilisan sale para sa parating na summer. The Smart Queen High Efficiency Model FTKC is an inverter type air conditioner with Eco Plus mode, an energy saving mode that will automatically adjust set temperature to an eco-friendly level while fulfilling basic cooling comfort needs. Say goodbye to sweaty nights and hello to sweet dreams with our energy efficient aircon. You can contact us at 0916-858-6228. SAI Air Conditioning and Ventilation Services.
Gabon Herbal Capsule. Inom o Gabon Herbal Capsule. Duha ka capsule kada adlaw 30 minutes before kamukaon. Atong paminahon ang naayo human miinom sa Gabon Herbal Capsule.
Ako si Ado de la Peña. Usa ko ka driver. Taga Dumaguete. Ako'y sakit na almoranas. Nakadungog ko sa radyo aning Gabon Herbal Capsule o Gabon Herbal Oil. Akong gisulayan. Pag-abot tulo ka adlaw, nawala na jud ang akong sakit na almoranas. O gisulayan po nako ning Gabon Herbal Oil. Lami kayo sa paminaw sa akong lawas. Nawala ang mga sakit sa akong kalawasan. O kaning ilahang Gabon Coffee Mix, lami kayo sa paminaw kay dili ka makatulog sa pagdrive.
Ang Gabon Herbal Capsule o Gabon Herbal Oil o Gabon Coffee Mix inyong mapalit sa tanang parmasi, Visayas ug Mindanao. Ang original nga Gabon Herbal Oil, butilya ang isudlan.
Limpyo limpyo ang karne sa baka, kabaw, manok, baboy, processed foods, mga sangkap sa imong paborito nga putahe, grocery, aw ni ara diri ang gikinahanglan sa imong family. Renren and Josel Meat Shop and Grocery. Ang Renren and Josel Meat Shop and Grocery adunay tulo ka mga sanga nga tindahan nga sayon kay yung tuoron sa lungsod sa Ilongos. Ana sila sa karnihan sa merkado publiko. Naasab sila sa Dan CV Alcuino, dool sa eskina sa Kanunay, ug sa RV Fulache Street sa eskina sa Cabidal sa lungsod sa Ilongos. Samtang kompleto sab sa tanang paginahanglanon sa kusina ang ilang tindahan sa Dan Juan Luna sa lungsod sa Bato. Ang Renren and Josel Meat Shop and Grocery gipadagan ubos sa landong sa RJTN Corporation. Alang sa healthy ug happy nga family, adto na ta sa Renren and Josel Meat Shop and Grocery. Nagkinahanglan ka og hardware and construction materials? Ayaw nag-apikihang imong kaugalingon igsuon kay naara na sa RM Espaldon Enterprises. Ana sila kuko lumber, good lumber, construction materials, sand and gravel, concrete hollow block, electrical supplies, plumbing supplies, fishing supplies ug uban pa. RM Espaldon Enterprises. Naa sila tindahan sa daan RV Villa Flores sa lungsod sa Hilongos. Kontak ka lang ang numero nga 0932-592-8323. Naasab sila sa lungsod sa Matalom sa Barangay Caridad Sur. Kontak ka lang ang numero nga 0917-302-5550. Ug ingon man dito sa Barangay Bambahaw sa Dakbayan sa Maasin. Tawagin dayon ang numero nga 0942-791-3303. Samtang perfect kayo alang sa family outing ug relaxing. Ang Jokrans Floating Cottage nga nahimutang sa Barangay Caridad Sur sa lungsod sa Matalom. Para sa reservation, tawagi ang numero nga 0942-368-0401. O baka padangati sila mensahe sa ilang Facebook page nga Jokrans Floating Cottage. RM Espaldon Enterprises and Jokrams Floating Cottage.
This is the Information Hub, soaring higher in the airwaves. This is 93.5 Marian FM.
Oras sa 93.5 Marion FM. As 9:32.
Hilongos atong lungsod. Tulumanon nga nahimugso sa bugtong tuyo ug tumong nga idiga ang kamatuuran ngadto sa katawhan. Hilongos atong lungsod. Way lipod-lipod nga mutandog sa mga hiskutanan nga may kalambingitan ang kinabag-an. Hilongos atong lungsod. Muhiklad sa mga labing labas nga kasayuran, impormasyon ug update sa mahaltang lungsod. Hilongos atong lungsod. Duyugi ang inyong amigo sa kahanginan, Najib Montera Cubio.
Mga gala, kumusta? Madong good morning, Hilongos! Welcome sa lain na sabda tabang panag-uban sa Tulomanon. Ang inyong Tulomanon. Hilongos atong lungsod, mga igsoon. Hilongos atong lungsod. Sangan sa kitibukan nga puwersa sa 93.5 Marion FM. Sangan sa tupinanggaon manggihunaon nga pangabaga samahan sa lungsod sa Hilongos. Vice Mayor Albert Bintong Villahermosa. Sa gihapon, ibos kalagad sa hanginan. Hangin sa amigo nga way paglubat. Sa amigong bongoton, Najib Montera Cubio. Makigdoyog ka ninyo pinangga hangtod takarong ontop alas 11 ang takna ni ining kabuntagon. Kabuntagon mga iso ko Hilongos noon ining adlaw nga Merkulis Santo. Pizza 5 mga igala sa buwan sa Abril tuig 2023. Kumusta to mga sugi nga mga tip kami now? Manginaot ko nga anak mo diha karon sa piskay kadasig imong kamaya. Ano pa oban mga higala sa tulumanon ang inyong tulumanon hilongos atong lungsod mga igsoon. Hilongos atong lungsod. Naot nga nakakagod na mo dihang tanan. Nakapalit na ba og mga sangkap, mga higala, mga sagols, binignit ang tanan? Ha? Andam na bang kaha para sa biko? Ang pinakahasol ra ba ng biko, no? Kana gadto paglatik. Oh. Ha? Upanhod mga higala imong bukton og inukay. Oh, kayo di po ni ukadon, mamilit-pilit. Muna giingon nga kalamay sa bohol ni pilit sa bagol. Oy, ang ahong amigo Eduardo Oybines. Adios. Pangupot og maadto sir ha. Ato good morning ni mo niya Eduardo Oybines. Anda Oybines Store Family. Tay pila kilos mangga ron sir. Kumusta ko no? Nagpabilin giya pong gwapo. O sa mga di ay. Bunguton lamang ni Sir Oybines pero City Savings Bank yun eh. Tawa na, injured na Manila boy, padong na. Retired na dyan padong. Early retirement. Di dyan ni matawag. Murag sobra panis optional. Kala oy. Oy adlaw karon mga igala nga Merkulis Santo ron, no? Adto mo wag sumansama diha kay dugay na maadto. Pero kuni ahong tiil wa pa man si Mana Santa dugay namin naghubag hato karo hubag manggihapon. Adios. Ha? Wala mga kutson na tumban. Mahibawaan ni karon ang resulta karon taon-taon. Oh. O nagiingon sa kinatsila pa. Ha. Kisira-sira. Whatever will be, will be. Ang klaro resulta ini onza ang madawat ng resulta, ang resulta ini daghang gidili pagkaon. Ay, adios. Kaya lagi kontra kana gadto labi na karo panahon na asos uso ka durog monggos. Aga una ngano bang na kontra man lagi nga hingamigohon mga kadota. Ha? Sa kadaghan atong amigo sa mga pagkaon noon kontra oy adios. Adios. Pero og papilion ta nagkotoy imong tiyan unsa maora man ang antusa tingali sa sakit pag imong tiil no. Ha? Kaya nagkotoy imong tiyan sakit pa kadto imong tiil. Oy, double damage. Kita lamang gamay ag busog ka samtang nag-antos ka kasakit imong tiil. Kaysa nagkotoy pa imong tiyan, sakit pa imong tiil. Oy, adios, pildi tanan. Di maadog pilimag-on. Ano sa atong duwa? Inzo na lamang tingnan ng duwa, tingali sir. Ha? Promoting health maning ato pero ahaw ni ipadadyo ning ahaw pagduwa porbida murag babali ang resulta sa promoting health. Di maadon tilimad-on. Lisod di pinsaan, haigon. Sa una, Jod. Sa una, Jod. Nakaabot pala maka sa pagkabataan-on. Tamo pa makuha egros ka gahong tuhon. Pastilan. Kita kag mga move, sir, nga wapas libro. Bitaw, oy, Merkulis Santo ron, ha? Unya, hinahinay sa mga higala gatawa kay mabunalan tayo ning kalakiha. Bawa lagi ko sa una manggod, sa una mga higalang katuigan bas, gamay pa ko. Si Manasanta gani, purbida, kuwang lawin tao, kinahanglan kada adlaw mo maghilak. Oh. Basta makita imong ngipon, lapdos. Piti ka. Oh, sa una, sa kagaraanan. Ya og kana sige mo ko duwa-duwa lagi. Oh. Wa po'y makabadlong po lagi naho. Duwa mga dugo, di makumpo asas duwa. Aw. Mato daw lola da. Kining bakos maupos ni nimo. Kaya ang tanan lagi ko nung panahon karon, igahin mga higala sa pagpamalandong, sa pagpangaliya, o niya kung ito mahimo kung ani ang kuwang lang mga higala adto ka podong simbahan. Sa una, una ka suburbio naman kadto ko, ingon sa lola, naunsa no ning kabataan karon? Naotro nagkabataan karon. Samot nang nakakita tos lola sa panahon karon, no? Kasak hagbakos lola, no? Daghan naghang bakos maupos, no? Bitaw, ay. Oh. Kalaki, lenten man ron mga higala. Uy, ugma na itoon, ugma sa buntag, way misa, no? Sa atong parokya diri sa Immaculate Conception Parish, way Santos nga misa. You know, naman na schedule dia sa Hilongos Info mga higala, ato man ang gi-post. Ang atong gi-share ang schedule sa tibuok kalihukan sa Semana Santa, gikan na sa Facebook page po na sa Immaculada Conception Parish. Oh. So, dito thumbnail lang to ninyo, no? Alang sa mga kuan. Pero mao lagi na ha, wa na magpasabot nga bisan pag magluhod ka maglakaw gikan sa Zumbay padong altar. Oh. Pero koto brabunas Birni Santo ini kahuman sa Semana Santa. Here we are again. Maohon lang maghihipon tingali na mga higala porbida. Bisa pag maglakaw ka lagi pinaluhod gikan sa idupultahan paingon sa ganghaan diri sa altar. Ug naibot mo ng tiil mga higala sa gilansan gipatiran ka na. Ha? Mato di ka bansak-bansakan. Oy nala kada na ang ato day pahinungod di mga higala sa kini ang atong Lenten special dinhi sa 93.5 Marion FM, no? Ang kini ang mga kalihukan alang ni sa pagbalaan, no, sa Semana Santa. Maminot masayod po ta ba? Ang ato ra mga Biblia sos hapnig kaadyo. No, mura ka do gi amirulan. Ngano man? Wa day pakli-pakli. Kita nga mga Katoliko, mga higala, pastilan. Kita may pinaka daghang dagko kadto nga mga simbahan, pero porbida mangutan-unta nga unsang bersikulo ha. Mangutana patag unsa na nga page, ma'am? Ato ang libro ni Mateo. Unsa nga page, ma'am? Di sama ba mga higalas, mga Biblia sa ubang mga relihiyon nga ay uban na ni kanang taon nagsigig Panginoon mga higalag lalis? Oh, kita ko nas plasa ni ebidensya sa una. Anong mga tao nga debatidor ba? Si Panginoon og lalis Biblia. Bida, ilang Biblia gawas nga naglumo-lumo na, naglukot-lukot na. Nasag-o na nila, nanimaho pagkatong ilok. Sipitan. Ay isod bagno kay able. Malangay, ini kakitag lalis, malangay. Ano, sipit-sipitan ra. Ano ba, nanimaho ng ilok? So kita, ay, katong mga Biblias bahay, pastilan. Tolid kayo. Ting ni, ha? Di ba kay good as nyo? Wa, di pakli, ah. Ala, paminaw ta mga higalag mga sugilanon, storybook pabugo ning Biblia, no? Nakabasa na mo suwaji kunog basa gamay, oy. Wa may mawa tingalin ninyo mamasa ta ba paminaw po ta mga higalag mo yun ini, no? Wa ko di mawa na to. No? Wa lagi di mo sakit imong ngipon. Wa gani. Hala, ato paminaon ang kini ang mga programa Lenten Special sa Hilongos atong lungsod sa 93.5 Marion FM.
Well, in a field with 3 flocks of sheep lying there beside it. There was a huge stone on the mouth of the well, and in the evening, when all the flocks were gathered, the shepherds together would remove the stone, water the sheep, and then replace the stone. The shepherds were from Haran, and they indeed knew Jacob's uncle Laban. In fact, Laban's daughter Rachel was just arriving at the well with her father's flock. When Jacob first caught sight of his beautiful cousin Rachel, he didn't wait for the other shepherds. Alone, by himself, he rolled the stone from the well and watered the flocks. Rachel was immediately taken with the stranger, as he was with her. Could this be the woman from Haran that Jacob would be taking for his wife? Jacob ran to Rachel and kissed her. He explained he was her father's relative, and she ran home to tell him. Jacob stayed in Laban's home and worked with him, and after a month, Laban said to him, "Just because you are my kinsman, should you therefore serve me for nothing? Tell me what your wages should be." Now Laban had 2 daughters. The beautiful Rachel was the younger, and the less attractive Leah was older. And Jacob had fallen in love with Rachel. So he made a bargain with Laban. "I will serve you 7 years for your younger daughter Rachel." And Laban agreed. The 7 years seemed to Jacob but a few days because of his love for Rachel. And after the 7 years had passed, he went to Laban and said, "Give me Rachel as my wife, that I may consummate my marriage with her." Laban agreed and prepared a huge feast. On the wedding night, there was great joy and celebration. There was music, dancing, and lavishly prepared food and wine. During the ceremony, and in the tradition of the times, the bride was veiled, and what Jacob did not realize was that Laban had tricked him. Behind the wedding veil was not Rachel, whom he loved, but Leah, her sister. For 7 years, Jacob had dreamed about this day, and he was perhaps the most excited of all who had come to celebrate with him. He ate and drank and danced and partied through the day and on into the night. Not for one moment did Jacob suspect that Laban would deceive him. He had no reason to doubt that he was marrying his first love, Rachel. And on his wedding night, he thought he had taken Rachel into his tent. Jacob did not discover until the next morning that he had consummated the marriage not with Rachel, but with her older sister Leah. He was devastated. "What is this you have done to me?" cried Jacob to Laban. "Did I not serve you for 7 years for Rachel?" Laban calmly explained that local custom required that the older daughter be married first. However, he told Jacob if he would finish the bridal week with Leah, he would give him Rachel, if he would serve him for another 7 years. Jacob agreed. After the week with Leah, Jacob married Rachel and served his uncle another 7 years. Leah, the unloved wife, proved to be fertile, while the much-loved Rachel did not conceive for many years. Leah had 4 sons, Reuben and Simeon and Levi and Judah. But like Sarah and Rebekah before her, Rachel also had difficulty conceiving a child. Since she failed to bear children, she became envious of her sister and offered her maidservant Bilhah to Jacob, that she may have children through her. Bilhah conceived and gave birth to Dan, and then a second son, Naphtali. And when Leah ceased to have children, she offered her maidservant Zilpah to Jacob, and she bore Jacob 2 sons, Gad and Asher. Leah then bore 2 more sons, Issachar and Zebulun, and a daughter, Dinah. Then finally, God remembered Rachel. He heard her prayers, and she bore a son, and this child they named Joseph. All told, 11 of the 12 ancestors of the 12 tribes of Israel were born during Jacob's 20 years of exile. Benjamin was yet to be born. After Joseph was born, Jacob spent 6 more years working for Laban. He was awaiting his mother's message that it was safe to return to his homeland, and he wanted to provide for his own household. For his wages, Jacob made an unusual request of Laban. In Genesis 30:31, Jacob says,
"You shall not give me anything. Let me pass through all your flock today, removing from it every speckled and spotted sheep, and every black lamb, and the spotted and speckled among the goats, and such shall be my wages."
Laban agreed to the bargain, and Jacob left reassured. Once again, however, Laban tried to deceive Jacob. As soon as they parted, Laban had his sons remove every one of those animals from his flock. This time, Jacob realized he was being cheated, and he had to protect himself from Laban and his kinsmen. God was watching over Jacob, however, and he saw to it that despite Laban's underhanded ways, Jacob's flocks grew larger and stronger, and Jacob became prosperous. The more prosperous he became, the more envious Laban and his kinsmen became. In Genesis 31:3, the Lord said to Jacob, "Return to the land of your fathers, where you were born, and I will be with you." Jacob then told Leah and Rachel about his plans to leave Laban. He also told them about a dream he had in which the angel of God said, "I have seen all that Laban is doing to you. Leave this land at once and return to the land of your birth." Trying to avoid a confrontation, while Laban was away shearing sheep, Jacob fled Padan Aram with his wives and children and servants and livestock and all his possessions. Before they left, and unbeknownst to anyone else, Rachel stole her father's household idols, which were precious to him, since they ensured his leadership of the family. She hid them in the saddlebags of her camel. Days later, when Laban returned, he was furious. He pursued Jacob for 7 days and finally caught up with him in the hill country of Gilead, west of the Euphrates River. Jacob and his people feared for the worst. They prepared for battle, but there was none. Laban had come in peace. He was not looking for a fight, as much as he was looking for an explanation. Not only was Laban insulted that Jacob had left secretly, not even allowing him to kiss his daughters and grandchildren goodbye, but he was further upset by the idea that Jacob had stolen his teraphim, the images of his household gods. Jacob was indignant at having been accused of stealing the idols. He not only swore he didn't have the idols, but he also promised he would kill anyone found with them. He invited Laban to search the camp. When Laban came to Rachel's tent, she was sitting on the camel bags where she had hidden the idols. Rachel pleaded that she could not rise, for the way of women was upon her. So despite the search, Laban never found his idols. Afterwards, Jacob and Laban made a pact of peace. The following day, Laban kissed his daughters and grandchildren goodbye, and the two men and their parties went their separate ways. Even though he had avoided a battle with Laban, Jacob still had his brother Esau to deal with. He decided to send messengers ahead to Esau in the land of Seir, the country of Edom. He told them to tell Esau that he had been living with Laban as an alien and had been detained there until now. When the messengers returned, they told Jacob that Esau was fast on his way to meet Jacob, and he was coming with 400 men. Jacob panicked. He and his party were no match for 400 men, and he was afraid that Esau would kill them all. He did what he could. First, he sent lavish gifts to Esau, including hundreds of sheep and goats and scores of cattle and camels, hoping to appease him. And at the same time, he moved his household and remaining goods to a safer place, back across the Jabbok, a tributary of the Jordan River. One of the most baffling stories in the Bible occurs when Jacob was alone that night on the bank of the Jabbok. Suddenly, he found himself wrestling in the dark with a mysterious stranger. Religious scholars for generations have debated the significance of this wrestling match. Does it symbolize the Israelites' persistent struggles with the Lord and the divine blessing it earned? Is it the battle every human must undergo with the forces of evil? In any event, Jacob and the stranger wrestled until the break of dawn, and when the stranger saw that he could not bring Jacob down, he struck Jacob's hip at its socket and sprained it. Nevertheless, Jacob eventually dominated the struggle. At daybreak, the man said, "Let me go!" But Jacob replied, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." In Genesis 32:28, the man replied,
You shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with humans, and have prevailed.
Before the sun rose, the stranger left. As Jacob limped away, he realized he had come face to face with God and survived. To this day, many Israelites do not eat the thigh muscle that is on the hip socket, for that is where Jacob was struck. Jacob rejoined his family, but he still remained fearful as his brother and his men kept getting closer. Esau and his men were now within sight. Jacob called his family together. Fearful that they would not survive a battle with Esau, he motioned them to stay back. When Esau came closer, Jacob bowed to the ground 7 times. The two brothers, who had not seen each other for over 20 years, approached each other. Jacob's fears of Esau were unfounded, for his forgiving brother ran joyously toward him, embraced him, and kissed him. Esau asked Jacob what he meant by sending all those gifts. And Jacob replied, "To find favor with my Lord." But Esau said, "I have enough, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself." But Jacob insisted, and Esau finally accepted the gifts. That day, Esau returned to Seir. And Jacob continued to Succoth, where he set up his tents and made pens for his cattle. Many years later, Jacob finally arrived safely at Shechem in the Promised Land, the land of Canaan, and he set up camp within sight of the city. He bought land from Hamor, the prince of the city, so that his people could live there in peace and harmony. And he set up an altar to the God of Israel. When Dinah, the daughter of Jacob and Leah, went out to visit some of the women of the land, Hamor's son, Shechem, seized her and raped her. When Jacob heard that his daughter had been defiled, he held his peace until his sons returned home from the fields. When they heard their sister had been raped, Jacob's sons were angered and seethed with indignation. Shechem's behavior was an outrage and could not be tolerated. Hamor tried to appeal to the sons, telling them that Shechem had his heart set on marrying Dinah. And then Shechem himself appealed to Jacob and his sons, telling them no matter how high they set the bride price, he would pay whatever they asked. "Only give me the girl to be my wife." "We cannot do this thing," replied the brothers, "to give our sister to one who is uncircumcised, for that would be a disgrace to us. Only on this condition will we consent to you, that you will become as we are, and every male among you be circumcised. But if you will not listen to us and be circumcised, then we will take our daughter and be gone. The men of the town agreed with the conditions, and every able-bodied man in the community was circumcised. On the third day, when all the men of the town were still in pain, recovering from their circumcisions, Dinah's brothers Simeon and Levi, two of Jacob's sons, took their swords and advanced against the city without any resistance, and they massacred every male. They killed Hamor and his son Shechem, and took Dinah from Shechem's house. Then the other sons of Jacob followed up the slaughter and continued to sack the city of Shechem. They seized all their flocks and herds, carried off all their wealth, their women and their children, and took whatever was in the houses. No man was left alive, and nothing was left standing. Jacob was gravely disturbed. He told Simeon and Levi they had brought great trouble to him and his family by making him odious to the inhabitants of the land. My numbers are few, he said, and if they gather themselves against me and attack me, I shall be destroyed. But the two sons continued to defend their action, arguing, should our sister be treated like a whore? Shortly thereafter, Jacob left Shechem, and in Genesis 35:1, the Lord said to Jacob,
Arise, go up to Bethel and settle there. Make an altar there to the God who appeared to you when you fled from your brother Esau.
So Jacob and all his people journeyed to Bethel in the land of Canaan. There, on the site of the vision of the angels on the ladder, he restored the altar he had built 20 years earlier. Once again, God appeared to Jacob and blessed him. In Genesis 35:9, God said to Jacob,
Your name is Jacob. No longer shall you be called Jacob, but Israel shall be your name. I am God Almighty. Be fruitful and multiply. A nation and a company of nations shall come from you. The land that I gave to Abraham and Isaac I will give to you, and I will give the land to your offspring after you.
Even after all these years, Isaac was still alive, and Jacob decided to visit him. On the journey, Rachel went into labor, not far from Bethlehem, where 2,000 years later, and just a few miles away, Jesus was born. Rachel never reached Mamre with Jacob. While giving birth to Benjamin, her second son, she died. Jacob continued his sad journey. Soon after he arrived in Mamre, his father, Isaac, also died. He was 180 years old. Esau and Jacob, his twin sons, buried him and never saw each other again. Except for his final years, Jacob lived the rest of his life in Canaan. In modern times, the name given him by God reappeared. In 1948, when the Jews of Palestine declared their independence, they named their new state after Jacob. They named it Israel. Now the story of Joseph and his brothers, which takes us from Israel to the land of Egypt. Joseph was the son of Jacob, grandson of Isaac, and great-grandson of Abraham. He was born in Israel some 200 years after the birth of Abraham, but his adventures took him south on a perilous journey to Egypt. Unlike Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Joseph never talks directly with God, but instead receives the Lord's messages through dreams, which were in those days considered divine communications. The story is an exciting tale of Joseph the dreamer, of Joseph of the splendid coat, how Joseph's brothers wanted to murder him and then sold him into slavery, and how Joseph survived and eventually became, other than the Pharaoh, the most powerful man in Egypt. When Joseph was 17, he was still living with his father Jacob and his 11 brothers. As you remember, Jacob had 12 sons, 6 by his first wife Leah, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. 2 sons by Leah's maid Zilpah, Gad, and Asher. And 2 sons were by his second wife Rachel's maid Bilhah, Dan and Naphtali. After years of not having children of her own, Rachel, Jacob's first love, gave birth to Joseph, who became his favorite. Benjamin, his 12th son, was born later. One day, when Joseph returned from the fields, he reported to his father that his brothers had been doing evil things, which only fanned the fire of their jealousy. Except for Benjamin, the brothers already disliked Joseph because he was their father's favorite son. To symbolize his favored position in the family, Jacob had made Joseph a beautiful coat of long sleeves, a coat of many colors. In such a coat, Joseph could not do manual labor as his brothers did. They wore only the drab, sleeveless coats of common shepherds, while Joseph's long coat was a constant reminder that their father loved Joseph more than he did them. Their dislike grew to hatred. Throughout history, Joseph has been referred to as the dreamer, and dreams in those ancient biblical times had far more significance than they do today. Many people believed it was one important way in which the supernatural world communicated with us, a way that God talked to people. This was extremely important in the life of Joseph. One day, he was out in the field with his brothers when he had a dream. In Genesis 37:6, he told his brothers,
"Listen to this dream that I have dreamed. There we were, binding sheaves in the field. Suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright. Then your sheaves gathered round it and bowed down to my sheaf." And his brothers said to him, "Are you indeed to reign over us? Are you indeed to have dominion over us?" And so they also despised him because of his dreams and his words.
Then Joseph had another dream in which his brothers all bowed down to him. And when he told it to them, their hatred grew to rage.
הנה חלמתי חלום עוד. הנה השמש והירח ו11 הכוכבים משתחווים לי. לוי! שמעון!
So it was that when they were out tending the flock one morning, and they saw Joseph approaching in his elegant coat, they said, "Let's kill him and get rid of him once and for all."
לכו ונהרגהו ונשלחהו לאחד הבורות, ואמרנו כחיה רעה חלת הוא. ונראה מה אז יהיו חלומותיו.
לא נקלו נפש!
למה לא?
אל
But
תשפכו
Reuben,
דם!
the eldest brother, argued, "No, let's not kill him. Shed no blood. Why don't we just throw him into this dry well here in the wilderness?" Reuben's plan was that when the brothers had all gone, he would come back and rescue Joseph and return him to his father. So that's what they did. They grabbed Joseph and tore off his coat and threw him down the deep pit. Sometime later, when Reuben was away, the other brothers saw a caravan of Ishmaelites approaching. And Judah said, "What's the profit in slaying our brother? After all, he's our own flesh. Why don't we just sell him to the Ishmaelites?"
בידינו אל תהי בו, כי אחינו בשרנו הוא. בואו נעשה את זה.
They all agreed and hauled Joseph out of the well and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. Then they decided to cover up their crime by killing a goat and dipping Joseph's beautiful coat in the blood to make it look as though Joseph had been killed by a wild animal.
זאת מצאנו. הקרנה, הכתונת פנהי המלו.
When the brothers showed the bloody coat to Jacob, he was convinced that his beloved Joseph had been devoured by a wild beast, as the Bible tells us in Genesis 37:34.
Then Jacob tore his garments and put sackcloth on his loins and mourned for his son many days. And all his sons and daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. Thus his father wept for him.
What Jacob did not know, however, was that Joseph was not dead. The Ishmaelites had taken him down into Egypt and sold him to Potiphar, the captain of Pharaoh's guard, to be a slave in his house. God, however, continued to watch over Joseph, as we learn from Genesis 39:2.
The Lord was with Joseph, and his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord caused all that he did to prosper in his hands. So Joseph found favor in his sight, and he made him overseer of his house, and put him in charge of all that he had. The Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. The blessing was upon all that he had in house and field. Now Joseph was handsome and good-looking, and after a time his master's wife cast her eyes on Joseph and said, "Lie with me." But Joseph refused and said to his master's wife, "Look, with me here, my master has no concern about anything in the house, and he has put everything he has in my hand. He is not greater in this house than I am, nor has he kept back anything from me except yourself, because you are his wife. How then could I do this great wickedness and sin against God?"
But Potiphar's wife kept after him day after day. He tried his best to ignore her, not to speak to her. One day, however, when he was in the house working and there was no one else around, she caught him and held on to his garment and commanded him once again to come lie with her. He tore away from her and fled, leaving his garment in her hand. Potiphar's wife was furious with Joseph's rejection, and she was determined to punish him. She screamed for help. "See, my husband has brought among us a Hebrew to insult us. He came in and tried to lie with me, and when I screamed, he fled. But he left his garment behind." She told Potiphar the same story when he came home, and Potiphar became enraged. He called his men and threw Joseph into the great prison where Pharaoh's prisoners were held. And there Joseph stayed, but he was not alone. The Lord was with him, as we are told in Genesis 39:21.
The Lord was with Joseph and showed him steadfast love. He gave him favor in the sight of the chief jailer. The chief jailer committed to Joseph's care all the prisoners who were in prison, and whatever was done there, he was the one who did it. The chief jailer paid no heed to anything that was in Joseph's care, because the Lord was with him, and whatever he did, the Lord made it prosper.
Sometime after this, 2 new prisoners arrived. One was the chief cupbearer of the Pharaoh, and the other was his chief baker. They had somehow angered the king, and he had sent them to prison. They had been turned over to Joseph, who was charged with taking care of them because they were important officers. One night, both of these new prisoners had troubling dreams, all the more troubling since dreams were considered messages from God. When Joseph came to them in the morning, he saw that they were upset and asked them why they looked so downcast. They told him that they had dreams, but they had no one to interpret them. And Joseph told them, with God's help, he would interpret their dreams. The chief cupbearer told him that he had dreamed of a vine with 3 branches, and that the branches blossomed and then ripened into clusters of grapes. He said that Pharaoh's cup was in his hand, and that he took the grapes and pressed them into the cup and gave it to Pharaoh. Then Joseph told them that the vines meant 3 days, and that within 3 days he would be restored to his former position as chief cupbearer. And Joseph said, "When they release you, please remember me. Mention me to Pharaoh, and try to get me out of here, for I have done nothing that they should keep me in this dungeon." When the chief baker heard the favorable interpretation of the cupbearer's dream, he was eager to tell his own dream. In his dream, there were 3 cake baskets on his head, and the top one was full of all sorts of baked goods for Pharaoh. But the birds came along and ate them. And Joseph said, "This is the interpretation. The 3 baskets are 3 days. In 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head from you and hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat the flesh from you." 3 days later, it was Pharaoh's birthday, and he made a great feast for all his servants. The chief cupbearer and the chief baker were brought out of prison and knelt before him. Restored the chief cupbearer to his former position, and he placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. But as Joseph had predicted, he condemned the chief baker to death, and the birds gathered to eat his flesh. Joseph, meanwhile, remained in prison. The cupbearer had forgotten Joseph's request. One night, 2 years later, Pharaoh had a dream which awakened him. But he went back to sleep. And that same night, he had a second dream. In the morning, the two dreams troubled him so much, he sent for all the magicians and wise men of Egypt to explain what the dreams had meant. But none of them could interpret the dreams. It was then that the chief cupbearer remembered Joseph. He told Pharaoh about the young Hebrew slave in prison who could interpret dreams. Pharaoh sent for Joseph. And when Joseph appeared before him, Pharaoh said, "I hear you can interpret dreams." Joseph again explained that his power to interpret dreams came from the Lord. "It is not I," he said. "God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer." Then Pharaoh said, "I dreamed I was standing on the banks of the Nile and saw 7 sleek fat cows grazing on the reeds, and 7 gaunt, thin, starving cows came up and ate the 7 fat cows. In my second dream I saw 7 ears of grain, full and good, growing on one stalk, and 7 ears withered, thin, and blighted by the east wind, sprouting after them, and the thin ears swallowed up the good ears." And Joseph explained, "Pharaoh's dreams are one and the same. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do. There are 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt, and after them there will arise 7 years of famine, and all the plenty will be forgotten. The famine will consume the land. And the doubling of Pharaoh's dream means that the thing is fixed by God, and God will shortly bring it about." Then Joseph told Pharaoh that he should appoint a wise and discreet man and make him overseer of all the land. This man would have the power to take 1/5 of all the grain during the 7 years of plenty and stockpile it to be used during the 7 years of famine. Pharaoh thought that would be a good idea, and he also believed that Joseph was the perfect man for the job. He took off his signet ring and placed it on Joseph's finger. And he gave him Asenath, the daughter of a high priest, to be his wife. Joseph was 30 years old, and at that time, with the exception of Pharaoh himself, there was no one in Egypt more powerful. As it happened, events turned out exactly as Joseph had foreseen. In the next 7 years, there was a bountiful harvest every year, and the granaries were full to overflowing, as the Bible says, full beyond measure, thanks to the foresight and diligence of Joseph. So also was Joseph's life full beyond measure. He had gained great prestige, great wealth, and Asenath had given birth to 2 sons. Joseph, however, took no credit for his great success. In Genesis 41:51, Joseph says,
God has made me forget all my hardship and all my father's house. God has made me fruitful in the land of my misfortunes. And then, as Joseph had predicted, after 7 years of plenty, there then came 7 years of famine, not just in Egypt, but throughout the world. Joseph continued to be in charge and oversaw the distribution of grain to the starving people. Not only was there enough grain for the Egyptians, but there was enough to be sold to other people as well. As the Bible says, all the earth came to buy grain from Joseph. Including, of course, Joseph's brothers. When Joseph's father Jacob heard that there was grain to be had in Egypt, he sent his 10 oldest sons down there to buy it, for the famine had also severely struck the land of Canaan, and Jacob was desperate. He kept Benjamin, his youngest son, by his side because he was afraid that harm might come to him on the journey. When they arrived in Egypt to buy grain, the 10 sons of Jacob were taken before the all-powerful Joseph. And they knelt down before him. This fulfilled the dream Joseph had had years earlier. They, of course, did not recognize Joseph as the brother they had sold into slavery. Joseph, however, recognized them immediately, but he did not let them know it. He spoke harshly to them and treated them like strangers. He turned his back to them as they pleaded with him to sell them grain. He even accused them of being spies. They denied it vehemently and tried to explain to him who they were, that their aged father Jacob was back in Canaan with their youngest brother, and they desperately needed to buy food. Joseph pretended he did not believe them and threw them into prison. 3 days later, when he felt that they had suffered enough, he went to them and offered them a bargain. "I will put you to a test," he said. "I will sell you the grain, but you must leave one of you here as hostage. Return home and come back with your younger brother, and I shall know you are telling me the truth, and you shall not die." The brothers agreed to do this and argued their predicament among themselves. They did not know that Joseph understood their language, since he had always spoken to them through an interpreter. Reuben said that what they were going through was punishment for what they had done to their brother Joseph so many years ago. "Did I not tell you not to wrong the boy? But you would not listen. Now comes the reckoning for his blood." This was too much for Joseph, and he turned away from his brothers and wept. Then he returned to them and picked out Simeon as a hostage. He allowed them to be given grain, and he sent them on their way. When they got back to Canaan, they told their father what had happened to them in Egypt. He was in despair. In Genesis 42:36, Jacob cries out,
"I am the one you have bereaved of children. Joseph is no more, and Simeon is no more. And now you would take Benjamin. My son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he alone is left."
But when the grain they had brought from Egypt ran out, and the famine was still severe in the land, the old patriarch realized he had no choice. He would have to send them back to Egypt for more grain, and he would have to send Benjamin with them. When the brothers arrived in Egypt and once again stood before the mighty Joseph, their reception was entirely different. Joseph was delighted to see Benjamin with them, and he ordered his steward to take them to his house and slaughter an animal, and he would dine with them at noon. The steward took the men to Joseph's great house, and he brought Simeon out of prison to be reunited with them. Joseph joined them at noon and asked them about their father, and paid particular attention to his younger brother Benjamin. They still did not recognize Joseph as their long-lost brother. According to the Bible, they drank and were merry with him, a far cry from the harsh and hostile treatment they had experienced before. Then Joseph commanded his steward to fill their bags with food, as much as they could carry. He also took his own silver cup and told the steward to secretly place it on top of the grain in Benjamin's sack. By morning's light, the brothers were on their way home. They had traveled only a short distance when they were overtaken by Joseph's steward, who accused them of stealing Joseph's silver cup. He challenged the brothers. "Why have you returned evil for good?"
למה ידבר אדוני כדברים האלה? חלילה לעבדיך מעשות כדבר הזה.
Naturally, the brothers were amazed and vehemently denied it. "Why should we do such a thing?" they said. "If it be found with any of us, let him die. Moreover, the rest of us will become your slaves." "So be it," said the steward. "He who has it shall be my slave. The rest of you shall go free." The steward began searching each man's sack, starting with the oldest. The last sack the steward searched was Benjamin's. And there, of course, he found the silver cup. Seeing this, the brothers cried out and tore their clothes in despair. How could they ever explain this to their father, Jacob? They loaded up their donkeys and returned to the city. They stood in fear before the now stern Joseph, who said, "What deed is this that you have done?" Judah stepped forward and pleaded eloquently with Joseph, telling him about his father and his love for Benjamin, the only remaining child of his old age. He ended his plea by asking Joseph to let him stay as his slave and let Benjamin go back to his father. Judah's plea was too much for Joseph. He could not keep up his charade any longer. He cried out and sent all the Egyptians out of the room. And he wept so loudly that all the Egyptians could hear him, and also the household of Pharaoh. The brothers were dismayed at this. But Joseph said, with great compassion and understanding, in Genesis 45:4,
I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. And now, do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life. For the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there are 5 more years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvest. God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to keep alive for you many survivors. So it was not you who sent me here, but God.
When Pharaoh heard that Joseph had been reunited with his brothers, he was very pleased. He said to Joseph, "Tell your brothers to load up their donkeys and go back to the land of Canaan, and get your father and all his household and come to me, and I will give them the best land in Egypt, and they will live off the fat of the land." When they returned home, and Jacob heard the whole story, that his son Joseph was alive and the governor of all Egypt, he was stunned, and at first he didn't believe them. But when he saw all the wagons Joseph had sent to carry them back, he rejoiced and said, "Enough! My son Joseph is still alive. I will go to see him before I die." So Jacob set out for Egypt with 70 members of his household and all their belongings and livestock. They stopped in Beersheba to offer a sacrifice to God, and that night God made Jacob a promise that has become central to the history of the Hebrews. In Genesis 46:2, God says, "Jacob, Jacob, I am God, the God of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for I will make you a great nation there. I myself will go down with you to Egypt, and I will also bring you up again." When Jacob and his large family arrived in Egypt, Joseph presented him to Pharaoh, and Jacob blessed Pharaoh, and Pharaoh was as good as his word. He instructed Joseph to settle his father and his brothers in the region of Goshen, which is a fertile area in the northeastern part of the Nile Delta, and see that they had food and anything else they needed. Jacob and his people prospered there, and they were fruitful and multiplied, and Jacob lived in Egypt for 17 years. During that time, Joseph became even more wealthy and powerful. By trading grain for land and services, he effectively abolished private property and established a kind of feudal system that was very profitable for the pharaohs and for Joseph himself. Then one day, he received the sad news that Jacob was dying.
הנה אביך חולה.
He took his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, and went to his father's bedside. Then Jacob blessed Joseph and his two boys. Jacob then called all his other sons around him, and he blessed them also.
את רבקה אשתו, ושמה קברתי את לאה.
And then, surrounded by the men after whom the 12 tribes of Israel were named, the patriarch Jacob breathed his last. He was 147 years old. Joseph and Benjamin and all their brothers took their father's body back to the land of Canaan, and they buried him in the cave at Mamre. There at Mamre, Jacob, his father Isaac, and his grandfather Abraham will remain together for eternity. Joseph returned to Egypt, where he had a large family of grandchildren and great-grandchildren. He lived to be 110 years old, and when he died, he was embalmed and placed in a coffin in Egypt.
Gayon na lamang ang pag-ibig ng Diyos sa sanglibutan. Kaya ibinigay niya ang kanyang bugtong na anak.
This is the Information Hub, soaring higher in the airwaves. This is 93.5 Marian FM. Pioneering in information distribution in town, soaring higher into the airwaves. 93.5 Marian FM.
Hilongos Aggregates. Magtukod ka wagbay, tamakanan ba imong yuta kay na lupa? Ay nagabala ka parts? Kunta ka dayon ang Hilongos Aggregates. Pasta sila nga motomod sa inyong mga panghanglanon sa construction. Ano na sila wash sand, screen sand, 3/4, 3/8, G1, ready mix, boulders, ug uban pa. Hilongos Aggregates. Makontak sila sa numero nga 0915-5952-608 o di ba kaha sa 0949-5722-708. Hilongos Aggregates sa panginahanglanon sa construction. Ang Hilongos Aggregates aduna sab sila'y ready mix concrete. Hilongos Aggregates.
Gabon Herbal Capsule. Inom o Gabon Herbal Capsule. Duha ka capsule kada adlaw 30 minutes before ka mukaon. Atong paminaon ang naayo human miinom sa Gabon Herbal Capsule.
Ako si Rodora taga Poblasyon Buog, usa ka angkan. Kabuhiunon kayo kong dako. Hinsulay ko og inom sa gabon capsule o gisabayan na ko gabon coffee leaves. Akong naobserbahan na wala naman ko kabuhia. Bisan akong bana nga modalikat sad og inom nawala ang hubag sa iyang kumagko sa tiil tungod sa arthritis. Sa maotong ga-maintain na jud ko sa gabon coffee mix o gabon capsule.
Ang Gabon Herbal Capsule o Gabon Herbal Oil o Gabon Coffee Mix inyong mapalit sa tanang parmasi, Visayas ug Mindanao. Ang original nga Gabon Herbal Oil, butilya ang isudlan.
Kung gusto ka nga mutiam-tiam sa lamian nga pan dinhi sa lungsod sa Hilongos, ayaw na paglangay bay. Bisitahan na yon ang Lulalos Bake Shop. Abli kada adlaw, gikan sa alas 5 sa sayong buntag hangtod na sa alas 7:30 ang takna sa gabi. Tilawi ang timplada sa pan nga dili lang lami, kundi presko pa yun. Lulalos Bake Shop ginamit ang mga dekalidad o gilado nga mga sangkap sa pagluto sa pan. Mao nga ang ilang pan siguradong lamian. Bisitahan na yon ang Lulalos Bake Shop sa kalye Santa Barbara sa lungsod sa Hilongos. Kay basig mahutdan ka. Mahimo silang makontak silang Facebook page nga Lulalos Bake Shop. Lulalos Bake Shop, absolutely delicious.
DTX 500.
Ako sa Jubilee, sobra kataas akong blood sugar. 300 kapin, gitistingan ako og inom GTX 500, duha ka kapsul sa isa ka adlaw. Sunod sa isa ka bulan, normal na jud akong blood sugar. 25 na lang.
DTX 500. Mabali sa mga butika. DTX
Ako
500.
si Makoy taga San Carlos, ga yelo akong lawas tungod sa problema na ko sa akong atay. Kalungog na ako sa radyo, ang DTX 500. Ako dayon gubanatan og inom tuwa sa buntag, tuwa sa gabi. 2 weeks pa lang, may alibyo na. Hard 1 month ka na ayaw na ako.
DTX 500. Mabali sa mga butika.
Hillary Department Store, abunda sa bisan unsa nga mga matang sa panginhanglanon sa panimay, lapad nga kapilian sa grocery, di kalidad nga mga appliances, mga sinina ni kuya og ni baby naasab, ug uban pang mga gikinhanglan sa panimay, sa eskwela, sa trabaho ug sa inyong pagpagwapa o pagpagwapo. Ang Hillary Department Store nagtanyag sab sa wholesale o retail nga presyo alang sa ilang mga produkto. Alang sa inyong mga pangutana o mga pakisusi, kontak ka lamang palihog ang Hillary Department Store. Pinagi sa cellphone number nga 0917-157-4032 o sa landline number nga 567-8015. Muatiman sa inyong mga panginhanglanon ang mga buutan o maabi-abihon nila nga mga staff. Busa, unsa pa imong gipaabot? Adto na ta sa Hillary Department Store nga anaa na himutang sa CV Alcuino Street, sakop sa Barangay Sentral sa lungsod sa Hilongos. Hillary Department Store. SAI Summer Season Sale. Free installation with no hidden charges. Mabilisan sale para sa parating na summer. This Smart Queen High Efficiency Model FTKC is an inverter type air conditioner with Eco Plus mode, an energy saving mode that will automatically adjust set temperature to an eco-friendly level while fulfilling basic cooling comfort needs. Say goodbye to sweaty nights and hello to sweet dreams with our energy efficient aircon. You can contact us at 0916-858-6228. SAI Air Conditioning and Ventilation Services.
Gabon Herbal Capsule. Inom o Gabon Herbal Capsule. Duha ka capsule kada adlaw 30 minutes before ka mukaon. Atong paminahon ang naayo human miinom sa Gabon Herbal Capsule.
Ako si Ado de la Peña, usa ko ka driver, taga Dumaguete. Ako'y sakit na almoranas. Nakadungog ko sa radyo aning Gabon Herbal Capsule o Gabon Herbal Oil. Akong gisulayan, pag-abot tulo ka adlaw, nawala na jud ang akong sakit na almoranas. O gisulayan po nako ning Gabon Herbal Oil. Lami kayo sa paminaw sa akong lawas, kay nawala ang mga sakit sa akong kalawasan. O kaning ilahang Gabon Coffee Mix, lami kayo sa paminaw kay dili ka makatulog sa pagdrive.
Ang Gabon Herbal Capsule o Gabon Herbal Oil o Gabon Coffee Mix inyong mapalit sa tanang parmasi, Visayas ug Mindanao. Ang original nga Gabon Herbal Oil, butilya ang isudlan.
Limpyo ang karne sa baka, kabaw, manok, baboy, processed foods, mga sangkap sa imong paborito nga putahe, grocery, aw ni ara diri ang gikinahanglan sa imong family. Renren and Josel Meat Shop and Grocery. Ang Renren and Josel Meat Shop and Grocery adunay tulo ka mga sanga nga tindahan nga sayon kay yung tuoron sa lungsod sa Hilongos. Ana sila sa karnihan sa merkado publiko. Naasab sila sa Dan CV Alcuino, dool sa eskina sa Kanunay, ug sa RV Fulache Street sa eskina sa Cabidal sa lungsod sa Hilongos. Samtang kompleto usab sa tanang paginahanglanon sa kusina. Ang ilang tindahan sa Dan Juan Luna sa lungsod sa Bato. Ang Renren and Josel Meat Shop and Grocery gipadagan ubos sa landong sa RJTN Corporation. Alang sa healthy ug happy nga family, adto na ta sa Renren and Josel Meat Shop and Grocery. Nagkinahanglan ka og hardware and construction materials? Ayaw nag-apikihang imong kaugalingon igsuon kay naara na sa RM Espaldon Enterprises. Ana sila kuko lumber, good lumber, construction materials, sand and gravel, concrete hollow block, electrical supplies, plumbing supplies, fishing supplies ug uban pa. RM Espaldon Enterprises. Naa sila tindahan sa daan RV Villa Flores sa lungsod sa Hilongos. Kontak ka lang ang numero nga 0932-592-8323. Naasab sila sa lungsod sa Matalom sa Barangay Caridad Sur. Kontak ka lang ang numero nga 0917-302-5550. Ug ingon man dito sa Barangay Bambahaw sa Dakbayan sa Maasin. Tawagi dayon ang numero nga 0942-791-3303. Samtang perfect kayo alang sa family outing ug relaxing. Ang Jokrans Floating Cottage nga nahimutang sa Barangay Caridad Sur sa lungsod sa Matalom. Para sa reservation, tawagi ang numero nga 0942-368-0401. O baka padangati silang mensahe sa ilang Facebook page nga Jokrans Floating Cottage. RM Espaldon Enterprises and Jokrams Floating Cottage.
TJX
Ako
500.
si Rochelle. Ang akong bugas-bugas miabot na sa akong likod. Painom sa akong mama. DTX 500. Walang kakapsula daadlaw. Sulod sa tulo ka semana. Nawala jud dayon ang akong bugas-bugas. The best jud og epektibo ang DTX 500.
TJX 500. Pumali sa mga butika. TJX
Ako
500.
si Makoy taga San Carlos ga yelo ako lawas tungod sa problema na ko sa akong atay. Kalungog na ako sa radyo ang DTX 500. Ako dayon gubanatan og inom tuwa sa buntag, tuwa sa gabi. 2 weeks pa lang may alibyo na pag 1 month kape na ayo na ako.
TJX 500. Pumali sa mga butika.
Ang himsog nga panlawas pangandoy sa tanan. Ilabi na sa panahon karon kundi gihulga ang tibuok kalibutan sa makalilisang nga sakit. Busa kitang tanan magbilantayon gayod dungan sa pagpaligon sa atong immune system. Ang Villa Flores Clinic sulod sa dugay nga panahon katambayayong na sa mga hilongusnon sa pagpabiling himsog sa ilang mga panlawas. Pinagi sa paghatag og dekalidad nga serbisyong medikal alang sa tanan. Ang klinika nagtanyag sa nagkadaiyang serbisyo sama sa pediatric, OB-GYN, newborn screening, preventive care, medical check-up ug ang medical laboratory. Laboratoryong gihangup ug aprobado sa Department of Health. Ang Villa Flores Clinic gitukod sa labing unang doktora sa atong lungsod, Dr. Altagracia Gracinga Villaflor, ug karon pa dayong gipaligon ubos sa pagdumala ni Dr. Eleanor Eli Villaflor. Katambayayong sila si Dr. Rebecca Barbosaong, Dr. Rodrigo Kapahi ug ang tibuok medical staff sa klinika. Sa tuyong mahatagan og dekalidad nga serbisyong medical ang tanan sa presyong makyangayon. Ang Villa Flores Clinic ana mahimutang sa RV Fulache Street, Hilongos, Leyte. Alang sa konsultasyon og sa dugang kasayuran, kontakang mga numero nga 053-567-9541 o kaha ang 0936-558-4781. Hinumdumi nga ang himsog na panlawas usa kabahandi.
This is the Information Hub, soaring higher in the airwaves. This is 93.5 Marian FM.
TJX
Ako
500.
si Annabel. As kayo ako cholesterol level nasa 200 plus. Akong gisulayan inom og DTX 500. Halos tanan ako silingan ga DTX 500. Nag-inom ko 3 capsules a day. Sa usa ka bulan pagpa-check up nako nag 100 na lang.
TJX 500. Pumali sa mga butika. TJX
Ako
500.
si Rochelle. Ang akong bugas-bugas miabot na sa akong likod. Painom sa akong mama. DTX 500. Walang kakapsula daadlaw. Sulod sa tulo ka semana. Nawala jud dayon ang akong bugas-bugas. The best jud og epektibo ang DTX 500.
TJX 500. Pumali sa mga butika. TJX 500 Health Alert with Dr. Ramil Uy. TJX 500.
Ako si Danny, na-diagnose nga na ay fatty liver. Natunggan ko nga nindo ang DTX 500 sa atay. Ug gisuwayan ko sa pagtumar. Wa ka kapsula matag adlaw. Sa sulod sa usa ka bulan, halik sa normal ko ang atay. Epektibo ang DTX 500.
TJX 500. Pumali sa mga butika.
Sa tanang suki na atong tigpaminaw, welcome na usab sa atong tulumanon.
TJX 500 Health Alert with Dr. Ramil Uy.
Maghatod kaninyo sa mga nagkalinlain ng mga herbal tips, health tips ug health information. Mutudlo usab kaninyo sa mga pagkaon nga kinahanglan kinahanglan kaunon, mga pagkaon nga kinahanglan likayan kay kami nituo sa gingon ni Dr. Sin. If you eat wrongly, no doctor can cure. But if you eat rightly, you don't need a doctor.
Immune system, Lig Uno, DTX 500, ang immune.
Dok, kining atong dugo, magkahugaw. Nga naman, kanang atong gikaon, the food that we eat, maadto na sa atong dugo. If ang atong gikaon nga dugo na ay mga toxins. Example sa mga toxins, bisag kanina lang bisyo, hikag inom alak, sigarilyo ka. Those, bisag smoke na siya, maadto na si mong blood through your lungs. Bisag giinom ni mo, maadto gyapon na si mong dugo through your small intestine, kay ma-absorb na. Kini siya, muhugaw imong dugo. Kung hugaw imong dugo ganing, patimaan na nga nahugaw na pug imong liver. Kay ang mutinlo o limpyo sa imong blood is your liver. So if ang imong liver nitiguang na, hindi na maayo ang functions, bigaw na ang functions,
ang imong kidney di na pod mo function, di na mo tabang og limpyo, kung may tabo na hugaw pod imong dugo.
In the first place, it's the blood nga nahimo sa imong liver o kidney hugaw. So kay di nimo siya ma-filter kaayo, di na mawala ning hugaw, mo na nga magkasamot, magkahugaw na pud ang dugo.
Actually gikan gyud sa atong pagkaon.
Pagkaon.
Ang nakapahugaw. Mabitaw ni nga ang saon kaha sa DTX 500 ug may TC makatabang aron malimpyo imong dugo. Naay mga simptomas sa GP nga hugaw imong dugo. Sama pananglit kanang tan-aw nimo imong panit, daghan gani ka og kanang bugas-bugas, acne, hugaw kayo, daghan mga katol-katol nga mugwa sa imong panit.
Mo itom imong
Nagpamatuod lang na siya nga hugaw ang imong dugo, no? Aside ana sa mga pagtuon, hugaw imong dugo kung magsigi atakihon sa allergy. Hugaw po na imong dugo, sigig sakit imong ulo, magsuka-suka ka ug uban pa. Nya kanusa man nimo limpyohan imong dugo, di karon na.
May matay dito masalakyan pa kay pwede nang i-change oil, i-drain na nimo, islang bago.
Ilisag filter. Nay ana, pero nay mga pamaagi aron malimpyo imong dugo. Number 1, suplementohan gid nimo og DTX 500 og may TC. Unsay day naa diha sa DTX 500? Kanang pait sa palya og pait sa tubo, no? Abi nimo tam isang tubo na apoy pait nga portion ang tubo. Mao nay mo limpyo sa imo nga dugo. Unahon sa niya limpyo ang imong tinai, limpyohan niya ang imo atay, limpyohan niya imong kidney, here comes limpyo ang dugo. Mabitaw tingala ka nga bisag unsa pa butang mo ointment, bisag unsa pa sabon, bisag pa butang sa imong mga bugas-bugas di man mayo, kay wala nimo unaha limpyo ang sulod. Kinahanglan limpyohi ang sulod, limpyohi ang tinai, limpyohi ang kidneys, limpyohi ang liver aron malimpyo ang dugo.
Sa healthy nga kasing-kasing, DTX 500, ang moamping DTX 500.
Si Makoy taga San Carlos ga yelo ako lawas tungod sa problema nako sa akong atay. Kalungog na ako sa radyo ang DTX 500. Ako dayon gibanatan og inom o sa buntag o sa gabi. 2 weeks pa lang may alibyo na. Mag 1 month ka pinaayo na ako.
DTX 500, mali sa mga butika.
So walay lain nga suplemento nga pwede nimo gamiton aron nga mahimong limpyo ning tulo ka organ like imo nga colon, imo nga kidneys, imo nga atay. Walay lain nga ultimate cleanser, ultimate detoxifier ang DTX 500 og ang Mighty C. Ana kanindot kung ikaw nag-inom og DTX 500 og Mighty C.
Limpyo nga atay, mag DTX 500 kanunay. DTX 500, question of the hour.
Dok, asla ko, 66 na akong edad. Nganong mo bleeding pa man ko, Dok?
Oy,
babae.
Na mga inanano late ang ilapan, minupusan. Pero kung dili na normal sa GP, pa-check up na kasi mga OB. Kay naarabay mga inana nga mga kaso, pwedeng naay cancer or naay problema ang ilang mga reproductive organ. So manay inyo himuon adto mo sa inyo nga mga OB or sa inyo nga doktor, pa-check up mo.
DTX 500.
Ako si Alex, may kayuti ay jud sakit ipanginhi og ako pod puson sakit. Ipatay ko sa akong misis og DTX 500 tulo ka kapsul sa buntag, tulo pod ka kapsul sa gabi. Simana lang nawala jud ang sakit ni balik sa normal ang akong pagpanginhi. Epektibo jud kayo ang DTX 500.
DTX 500, mali sa mga butika. DTX 500, health alert. Limpyo nga atay, mag DTX 500 kanunay.
Kininasab si Dr. Ramil Oy magaingon ang Diyos mga panalangin kanatong tanan mag-ayos daghan yung sakit o balatian.
DTX 500, health alert with Dr. Ramil Uy. DTX 500.
Si Albert nga taga-dumagig ko ang akong mga tiil o mga kasakit ilong. At pagkadungog na po sa DTX 500, akong gidouble dose o makapsul sa buntag, sa gabi. Wala pa'y bulan, nawala ang hubag-hubag og sakit sa akong mga kamay. Epektibo kayo ang DTX 500.
DTX 500, mali sa mga butika. DTX 500.
Ako si Alex, may kayuti ay jud sakit ipanginhi og ako pod puson sakit. Ipatay ko sa akong misis og DTX 500 tulo ka kapsul sa buntag, tulo pod ka kapsul sa gabi. Simana lang nawala jud ang sakit ni balik sa normal ang akong pagpanginhi. Epektibo jud kayo ang DTX 500.
DTX 500, mali sa mga butika.
This is the Information Hub, soaring higher in the airwaves. This is 93.5 Marian FM.
Oras alas 11:04 na sa Kabuntagon na din sa pag-uban sa Tulamanon unya watay igo nga panahon mga higala sa tong Tulamanon unya hinahinin tag dagoy-doy niini aron nga makapadayon sa atong mga gimbuhaton gumikan lagi mga higala niining atong pagtimaan sa Semana Santa. So manghinaot ko nga have a blessed week ahead, no? Sa atong pagpamalandong ining pagtimaan atong mga higala sa pasyon, sa pagsakit o pagkamatay o pagkabanhaw sa atong makagagahom.
Hilongos atong lungsod.
Ya, adto na sila. Sangan sa kitibuk-an nga puwersa. Sa 93.5 Marion FM. Sangan sa itong pinanggaon manggihunahon nga pangabaga samahan sa lungsod sa Hilongos. Vice Mayor Albert Bintong Villahermosa. Kini boss kalagad kangina ng inyong amigo nga way paglubad. Inyong amigong Bongoto Najib Cubio manamilit og moingon. Ang katarong og ang kangayan magabiling idlas kana kun dili pangitaon sa katawhan. Have a blessed week ahead. Pajong good morning Hilongos. Sorhay.
Hilongos atong lungsod.
Bodies of water out of gully streaming.